Call your country bumpkin mother and have her come over from the village. She can be my cleaning lady," said Evelyn. Emma held back her tears and answered calmly, "All right, I'll call her." Everyone froze in stunned silence when the country woman actually arrived. Before we continue, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Emma adjusted the lace collar of her modest dress, trying to hide the nervousness in her chest. Tonight, she and Daniel were having dinner at his mother's house, Evelyn Peterson. Every visit felt like a trial by fire. Evelyn, a woman of power and used to luxury, had disliked Emma from the very beginning. To her, a simple girl from a small rural town could never be good enough for her son, a rising star in corporate law. Daniel noticed how uneasy she was and gently took her hand. "Don't worry," he whispered. "It's going to be okay." But his voice trembled slightly, betraying his own uncertainty. Emma knew Daniel loved her, but he was too mild, too hesitant, especially when it came to standing up to his mother. They stepped into Evelyn's spacious apartment. Every detail oozed wealth: designer furniture, ornate paintings in golden frames, crystal chandeliers glittering above. Everything screamed status. Emma always felt uncomfortable here. Growing up in a modest country home, she felt like she didn't belong. Evelyn greeted them in the living room with a cold, dismissive glance in Emma's direction. "Ah, so you made it," she said flatly with not a hint of warmth. "Daniel, did you even explain to your wife how to behave at the dinner table?" Daniel looked at Emma apologetically. "Mom, don't start," he said under his breath. "I just want everything to be proper," Evelyn cut him off. "Last time she managed to spill sauce all over the tablecloth. Honestly, Emma, you could use a few lessons in basic etiquette." Emma felt her cheeks flush. She tried to brush off the insult, but each time Evelyn struck, it was harder to take. She loved Daniel. She wanted things to work with his family. But Evelyn seemed determined to make her life miserable. They moved into the dining room, where a lavish table awaited them: polished silverware, fine china, elegant gourmet dishes. Everything designed to impress. Emma sat quietly, straightening her posture, doing her best to stay unnoticed. At one point, Evelyn turned to her with a cruel little smirk. "So, Emma, how's life in that little town of yours? Still raising cows out there?" Daniel frowned. "Mom, come on. Why would you say that?" "What? I'm just curious," Evelyn replied with mock innocence. "I've always wondered what people actually do in those places. Must be terribly dull. No culture, no real entertainment." Emma clenched her fists under the table. She wanted to speak up, to tell this woman about the beauty of her hometown, about the decent, hard-working people who lived there. But she stayed silent, unwilling to create a scene. "It's peaceful," she said softly. "Clean air, kind people." "Kind people, sure," Evelyn snorted. "But kindness doesn't get you anywhere in life. You need education, brains, a certain social position." Then, as if she'd saved the cruelest thing for last, Evelyn said, "You know, Emma, my cleaning lady's out sick. Since you're from a family of laborers, used to working hard, maybe you could call your mother, have her come in from the sticks. She could clean the apartment for me." The room fell into a heavy silence. Daniel sat there frozen, jaw slack, stunned by what he had just heard. He knew his mother could be cruel. But this was venom. Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks. That was too much. Evelyn had crossed every boundary. Emma wiped her face, looked Evelyn straight in the eyes and smiled with restraint. "All right, I'll call her," she said, her voice steady. Daniel stared at her, shocked. He hadn't expected this. He thought she'd break down and leave in tears, but instead, she stood her ground with quiet dignity. Evelyn, too, was thrown off. She had expected drama, a meltdown, anything but composure. Dinner ended in an unbearable silence. Emma barely touched her food. Inside, she was boiling, hurt, furious, but she kept it all locked inside. This wasn't the time. She needed to think, to decide what came next. Daniel and Emma drove home without a word. He was filled with guilt and helplessness. He knew Evelyn had gone too far, but he didn't know how to undo the damage. Back in their apartment, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, shattered. Evelyn's words still echoed in her mind. "Call your country bumpkin mother. Have her come in from the village. She'll be my cleaning lady." Daniel paced around, silent and remorseful. Then he knelt beside her and took her hand. "I'm so sorry, Em. I'm sorry for her. You know how she is," he whispered, voice heavy with shame. Emma turned her face away. She couldn't look at him. "How she is," she repeated in a hushed voice. Arrogant, cruel, prejudiced, and he, her Daniel, couldn't or wouldn't stop her. For the first time in their relationship, a shadow of doubt crept into her heart. Was this really worth it? Could she ever feel like she truly belonged in this family? Or would she always be the outsider, looked down upon, made to feel lesser? And perhaps more deeply still, Emma felt the kind of fatigue that doesn't just come from confrontation, but from years of being judged for who you are, for your roots, for your body even, for your place in the world. Sometimes, in moments like these, we quietly wish there were something, some small shift, some unexpected change, that could help us take back control of our story, not just in relationships, but within ourselves. Emma wiped her face and looked at him. "I don't know, Daniel. I really don't. I'm just tired of her contempt." He pulled her close. "I love you, Emma. I swear this won't happen again. I'll talk to her." But Emma had heard it all before. Emma needed air. She stepped out onto the balcony and stared at the city below. The lights flickered like distant stars, but instead of beauty, all she felt was a hollow ache. Her world felt smaller somehow, darker. Evelyn's words had wounded her deeper than she expected, and she wasn't sure how to heal. Then, suddenly, her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel small, sweetheart. You deserve respect." With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and dialed. "Mom, it's me." "Hi, darling. How are you?" Nina's voice was warm and calm, like a safe place after a storm. Emma couldn't hold back the tears anymore. "Mom, she did it again." Nina didn't interrupt. She didn't rush to give advice. She just listened. Emma poured everything out. The dinner, the insults, the unbearable humiliation. And when the words finally ran dry, there was a pause, a quiet breath on the other end of the line. "Don't worry, darling," Nina finally said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm coming." Emma blinked. "You're coming where? Why?" "To Evelyn's," her mother said plainly. "What, Mom? What are you talking about?" Emma pictured her kind, hard-working mother stepping into that luxurious apartment. The thought of her being judged and mocked made Emma's stomach twist. "No, Mom, please, you don't have to—" "Honey, don't worry," Nina interrupted gently. "I know what I'm doing. Just trust me." There was a strength in her voice that stopped Emma cold. It wasn't forceful, but it was firm, unshakable. "But Mom, I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "You will understand. Just trust me. I'll be there tomorrow." Emma sat in silence for a moment, overwhelmed and confused. "Okay, Mom," she whispered. "Okay." When she hung up, Daniel was still sitting on the bed, head lowered, lost in thought. "What did she say?" he asked. "She said she's coming," Emma replied. "Coming? Where?" "To your mother's." Daniel looked up sharply, his face clouded with confusion. "Why?" "I don't know," Emma said, shrugging slightly. "She didn't explain. She just asked me to trust her." Daniel frowned. "Maybe we should talk her out of it. It could be awkward." Emma looked at him, her gaze sharp and unflinching. "Are you scared, Daniel? Scared your mommy might be upset?" Daniel flushed. "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not. I'm done hiding. I'm done tiptoeing around your mother's moods. If my mom wants to speak to her, let her. Let them deal with each other." The next morning, Evelyn's apartment was wrapped in an uneasy silence. The air was heavy, as though the walls themselves remembered the tension of the night before. Evelyn, as usual, sipped her morning coffee with practiced poise, but something about her eyes betrayed a flicker of anticipation. She imagined a timid country woman arriving any minute now, desperate, dowdy, and willing to scrub her floors just for the opportunity. The thought brought a small, cruel satisfaction. In her mind, she had won. She had humiliated Emma, shown her place, and proven her own superiority. But when we get too comfortable on a pedestal we've built for ourselves, life has a way of humbling us, and often it comes from the most unexpected place. Just as transformation often begins not with struggle, but with clarity, the kind that invites us to take our power back, inside and out. Time dragged on. Evelyn checked the clock more than once, not bothering to hide her impatience. When Daniel offered her another cup of coffee to lighten the mood, she waved him off with thinly veiled disdain. Then the doorbell rang. A smile crept across Evelyn's face. She stood and strode to the door, eager to meet this supposed cleaning lady. She pictured a tired face, worn clothes, maybe a scarf tied over thinning hair. But when she opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. Standing there was a woman in a sleek, tailored suit and sunglasses, her hair perfectly styled, her nails gleaming with fresh polish. Her posture radiated composure, and every inch of her whispered confidence and grace. "Good morning," the woman said, removing her sunglasses with ease. "I'm Nina Bennett, Emma's mother." Evelyn's mouth fell open. She didn't respond at first, completely thrown off balance. This was not what she had expected. You're the cleaning lady?" she finally managed, her voice faltering. Nina lifted a brow, slightly amused. "Cleaning lady? Oh no, I'm the owner of a family-run agricultural business, Bennett Acres. We manage nearly 200 acres of organic farmland." At that moment, Emma and Daniel appeared in the hallway. Emma bit her lip, trying not to laugh at Evelyn's stunned expression. Daniel stood frozen, no less shocked than his mother. He had always assumed Emma's family came from modest means, but he had never imagined this. "Mom," Emma said softly. "Hi, sweetheart," Nina replied, her voice warm and full of quiet pride. "I hope I'm not interrupting your morning tea." Evelyn straightened her shoulders, struggling to regain control. "Please come in," she said, her voice stiffer than usual. "I wasn't aware that you were, well, not what I expected." "That's the trouble with expectations," Nina said with a calm smile. "They often get in the way of seeing people for who they really are." She stepped into the lavish living room and glanced around at the opulence without the slightest hint of admiration. "It's a beautiful place," she said politely, "but I prefer the countryside. Cleaner air, kinder people." Evelyn didn't know what to say. She stood frozen, disarmed by the quiet strength of this woman she had so badly misjudged. Her arrogance had turned on her. Her disdain had become her downfall. The living room felt unusually still. Daniel shifted awkwardly near the doorway, unsure of what to say. Evelyn sat stiffly across from Nina, her fingers tightening around her porcelain coffee cup, as though it could ground her, but she had lost her footing. That much was clear. Nina, on the other hand, was composed. Her face was calm, her presence unshakable. She didn't glance at the expensive decor or the sparkling chandeliers. Her attention was entirely fixed on Evelyn. Finally, Nina broke the silence. "Evelyn," she said, her tone polite but firm, "I didn't come here to start a scene or prove anything to you. I came to protect my daughter." Evelyn's cheeks flushed. I didn't mean to offend anyone," she stammered. "It was all just a misunderstanding." But Nina raised a hand, stopping her. "Let's not pretend. I know what you think of my daughter, that she's some unworthy girl from the middle of nowhere, someone beneath your son. But let me tell you something. Emma is one of the kindest, most honest, most hard-working people I've ever known. She loves Daniel, and she gives her whole heart to this relationship. If you can't see that, it doesn't speak poorly of her. It speaks poorly of you." Evelyn looked down, eyes fixed on the floor. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have a retort ready. Her voice, so quick to judge and wound, had fallen silent. Nina continued, her voice unwavering. "I hope you realize that your words didn't just hurt Emma. They hurt me. My husband and I raised her with care and pride. We gave her love and values. To hear her tell me how you've treated her, it breaks my heart." Just then, Emma returned with the tea. She placed the cups gently on the table and sat beside her mother. Nina reached for her hand and gave it a tender squeeze. "Darling," she said, looking her daughter in the eyes, "never forget who you are. You are strong, kind, and more than enough. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise." Emma nodded, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. There was something healing in that moment, something grounding. Her mother's presence gave her strength she didn't know she still had. And sometimes, all it takes is someone who reminds us of our worth to ignite the beginning of a deeper transformation. Not just in how we're treated, but in how we treat ourselves, the way we walk, the way we nourish our body, the way we carry our story with dignity instead of shame. Evelyn tried to speak, but the words came out muddled. I just thought maybe she should spend more time managing the home. She doesn't really cook or clean." Emma let out a quiet laugh. "Evelyn," she said, her voice calm and steady, "I don't believe a woman's purpose is to serve anyone. I work. I study. I love your son. That is enough. And if you're not happy with the way I manage the house, you're free to hire help. With your money." Evelyn pursed her lips. She hated when people brought up her wealth. It was her favorite tool, her secret weapon. But now, it had lost its power. She couldn't control this conversation with money. Seeing the tension build again, Daniel finally stepped forward. "Mom, please," he said softly but firmly. "Let's stop this. Emma is my wife. I love her, and I need you to treat her with respect." It was the first time in years that Evelyn saw her son stand up to her like that. His voice had changed. He wasn't pleading. He was demanding. And that frightened her more than she expected. She looked at Daniel and saw something new in his eyes: strength, resolve. He wasn't the boy who always sought her approval. He was a man who had chosen his partner and was ready to protect her. "All right, Daniel," Evelyn said at last, her voice quieter now. "I'll try. But please understand, I just want what's best for you." Nina had been watching silently, her expression unreadable. But now she stood and turned toward Evelyn with a calm, thoughtful nod. "Evelyn," she said gently, "I'm glad we spoke. I truly hope this moment has opened your eyes. Judging people based on where they come from or how much money they have is a terrible mistake. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." Evelyn gave a reluctant nod, avoiding Nina's gaze. Her facade had cracked, and now all that was left was discomfort and shame. Emma stood and wrapped her arms around her mother. In that embrace, she felt whole again, stronger, more herself than she had been in weeks. She was no longer the insecure girl trying to fit into someone else's world. She was a woman with a voice, and someone who had her back. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. "I love you, sweetheart," Nina replied, smoothing her daughter's hair. "You're going to be just fine." With a graceful calm, Nina picked up her handbag and made her way to the door. "I'll call you later," she told Emma, with a soft smile before stepping outside and into the waiting car. The moment she left, it was as if the last trace of Evelyn's superiority left with her. The apartment fell silent again. Evelyn sank into her chair, staring off into space. She looked smaller somehow, less formidable. Daniel had never seen her like that. Emma, meanwhile, felt something shift deep inside her. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was reclaiming her voice, her pride. For once, she felt unshaken. And while she had come seeking peace, what she found was something even more powerful, a reminder that healing often begins with standing firm, and that change, no matter how small, is always possible. Daniel returned, looking drained and remorseful. "Emma, I'm so sorry," he began, his voice faltering. "I should have stood up for you earlier. I didn't know what to say to her." Emma walked over to him and gently took his hand. "Daniel, it's okay. What matters is that you understand it now. Don't apologize. Just be with me. That's all I need." He squeezed her hand tightly. "I will, I promise. I'll never let her speak to you that way again." Emma smiled. And this time, she believed him. There was a new tone in his voice, one she hadn't heard before. This moment had changed him. She could feel it. The days that followed were quiet. Evelyn didn't call. She didn't invite them over. The silence, once a sign of distance, now felt like peace. Emma and Daniel settled into their apartment, finally able to breathe without the weight of judgment. Daniel became more attentive. He listened more. He asked about her day, her thoughts, her feelings. It was as if he was trying to make up for all the times he hadn't been fully present. Emma appreciated it, though she didn't say much. She didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than words. One evening, as they were having dinner together, the phone rang. Emma glanced at the screen and froze. It was Evelyn. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Emma, it's me," came the voice on the other end, softer than usual. I wanted to apologize for everything I said and did. I was wrong. So wrong." Emma didn't speak. She waited. "I know you probably don't want to forgive me," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling. "But I had to say it. I needed to. I'm ashamed of how I treated you." Emma took a deep breath. "Evelyn, I appreciate your apology, but I need time. I can't just pretend none of it happened." "I understand," Evelyn replied quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm truly sorry." The call ended. Emma put down the phone and looked at Daniel. He had been watching her, not saying a word. "What did she say?" he asked. "She apologized," Emma answered. "Said she's ashamed of what she did." Daniel let out a slow breath. "I'm glad. Maybe it's finally the beginning of something better." Some days later, Emma and her mother sat together in the kitchen of their old family home. The scent of chamomile tea filled the air as they sipped in the quiet warmth of the countryside. It was peaceful here. No sharp words, no judgment, just comfort. "So, sweetheart," Nina said with a knowing smile, "how's your mother-in-law doing these days?" Emma laughed. "Trying to be better, or at least trying to act like it." "That's good," Nina said, her voice calm. "As long as she understands that respect isn't something money can buy, it's something you earn." Emma nodded. "You're right, Mom. I think she finally learned that." And deep inside, she realized something else was shifting too, something that had nothing to do with Evelyn. It was about her, about how she saw herself, how she carried her body, how she spoke her truth. For the first time in a long time, Emma didn't feel like she was fighting for her place in the world. She felt like she had reclaimed it. Not because Evelyn had changed, but because Emma had. Because she had spoken up. Because she had refused to be small. Because she had stood her ground with grace and dignity and discovered that love, when backed by courage, could reshape the very space around her. And maybe, just maybe, there was more waiting for her than just emotional healing. Perhaps her physical well-being, her confidence, her energy, they too were ready for change, for something gentle, natural, and quietly transformative. If you've ever felt this way, like you've been carrying invisible weight, like your body doesn't quite feel like your own anymore, there's something you should know. A recent discovery has caught the attention of researchers and everyday people alike. A simple, natural purple peel that appears to help support fat-burning processes in the body, even while you sleep. No extreme workouts, no harsh diets, just a natural shift that could help you feel more like yourself again. You'll find more details about it in the description of this video, and if it speaks to you, as it did to others, let that curiosity be the first step toward your own renewal. The days went by quietly, almost too quietly. Evelyn hadn't reached out again, and while part of Emma appreciated the peace, another part of her remained cautious. Change, after all, doesn't always last. One afternoon, as Emma folded laundry by the window, she thought back to that moment when her mother stood at Evelyn's front door, confident, composed, unshakable. That image had burned itself into her memory, not because it shocked her, but because it reminded her who she came from. That strength ran in her blood. Later that evening, Daniel returned home with 2 cups of coffee from their favorite little cafe. "You seem tired," he said with a smile, handing her one. "I thought this might help." Emma smiled, touched by the gesture. He was trying, really trying, not just to repair what had been broken, but to grow with her. As they sat on the couch, the doorbell rang. Emma and Daniel exchanged a look. Neither of them was expecting anyone. Daniel opened the door to find a small package resting on the floor. No note, no sender. He brought it inside, and Emma carefully opened the plain wrapping. Inside was a porcelain tea set, white and gold, delicate and clearly antique. Emma froze. It was the same set Evelyn had once refused to let her touch. At the bottom of the box lay a short, handwritten note. "Emma, this belonged to my grandmother. I always believed it was too precious to be handled by anyone but me. But I realize now that true value isn't in what we protect, but in how we share. I hope you'll accept this as a token of apology. Evelyn." Emma stared at the letter for a long time. It wasn't just the gesture, it was the humility behind it. The recognition, the surrender of pride. That kind of apology, she knew, didn't come easy for a woman like Evelyn. She folded the note carefully and tucked it into her journal. She wasn't ready to forgive completely, but she was ready to let go of the weight. She looked at Daniel, who was watching her closely. "She's trying," he said softly. "I know," Emma replied, "and I want her to keep trying. But I'm not going to bend myself anymore. I'm not shrinking to make anyone else comfortable." Daniel reached out and brushed a lock of hair from her face. "I wouldn't want you to. Not ever again." That night, as they lay in bed, Emma stared at the ceiling, her thoughts quiet but not restless. She had crossed a line in her life, a threshold between who she used to be and who she was becoming, the kind of line you only cross once. She no longer feared Evelyn's judgment. She no longer sought her approval, and most importantly, she no longer questioned her own worth. She remembered her mother's words, as clear as if they'd just been spoken. "You are worthy of respect, sweetheart. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." Those words had become her armor, her anthem, and now they were her truth. Weeks later, Evelyn invited them over, not for dinner, but for tea. Emma hesitated at first, but something inside her said it was time, not to forget, but to show Evelyn the woman she couldn't ignore anymore. This time, Emma wore a dress she loved. Not fancy, not flashy, just hers. She held her head high as she stepped into the apartment, Daniel at her side. Evelyn opened the door herself. She looked different, less stiff, more subdued. She even smiled. "Thank you for coming," she said, stepping aside. Emma nodded. "Thanks for the invitation." On the table was the very same tea set Evelyn had sent her, and next to it, a plate of homemade cookies, slightly burned at the edges. "I tried baking," Evelyn said awkwardly. "Clearly, I'm not as talented as some." Emma looked at her, and for the first time, she saw not an enemy, but a woman. Flawed, human, trying. They sat and drank quietly, no jabs, no cold remarks, just tea and effort. And sometimes that's all healing needs, a quiet table, an open heart, and a moment of honesty. Because growth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in softened glances and gestures that once would have been unthinkable. As they said goodbye and stepped into the sunlight, Daniel reached for her hand. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. Emma smiled. "I'm proud of me too." And in that moment, she knew the past hadn't broken her. It had shaped her. Not into someone harder, but into someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who no longer needed permission to take up space. Someone who had found her voice again, in every word, in every choice, in every step toward a life that felt more like hers. And if you're still searching for that feeling, if you too want to reconnect with your strength, with your body, with your rhythm, don't forget to check the description of this video. What you'll find there might just be the unexpected spark you've been waiting for. After all, sometimes the smallest shifts unlock the greatest changes.